Welcome to That's a Hard No, the podcast about learning to say no and set boundaries to live our best lives. I'm your host, Heather Drago. You may think, because of this podcast, that I'm a boundary setting expert, but I'm not. I'm an expert at struggling to set boundaries. But you know what? I'm working on it, and it is getting easier. Follow along with me as I learn from fellow strugglers and experts so that you too can start saying no without feeling fear, guilt, or FOMO.
You don't know where to go. Unfriendly applications got you feeling low. You're not sure what to do. Weight of expectations is coming down on you. There's a phrase you should know. Tastes so much sweeter than hello. That's a hard no.
When you imagine a cluttered home, what do you imagine the owner of that home is like? That person is never something good. They're lazy, they're dirty, certainly not a smart, well-meaning person, right? Well, hear me out. What if that person was you? That can be a way that lots of us think about ourselves, but that's not really a fair characterization. Sure, sometimes I walk into my messy kitchen and think it's a moral failing of mine. My friend's kitchen smells like vanilla bean and the countertops glisten. Why can't I keep up? Well, we shouldn't feel like a messy room reflects a messy person. Giving ourselves grace, understanding that we deserve patience, is so important, and is the only way to find the energy to clean it all up anyways. And all clutter isn't created equal. Sometimes clutter can be a boundary you don't know that you need to set. Those clothes are all over the floor because you work until 10 p.m. and come home too exhausted to do a load of laundry. Those bills on the table have piled up to remind you that you're not setting healthy boundaries around your spending. What if our clutter is trying to tell us something? The way we treat our environment reflects the way we treat ourselves. Our guest today is an expert on the way we think about our space. A self-proclaimed Clutter Whisperer, Star Hansen is a certified professional organizer on a mission to help you banish your personal clutter monster, take control of your stuff, and create a life you're truly proud of. She has appeared on over 30 TV shows, given a TEDx talk, and shared her fitted sheet folding secrets with Oprah and her fans. Her unique methodology has helped thousands of people get and stay organized when nothing else worked. So Star, hello, it's so nice to meet you.
It is so great to meet you, Heather. I'm so excited to come and chat with you today about boundaries. One of the things that I love so much about you and everything you're doing is you just talk about someone who's in progress of learning. I think it's just so common. We're just inundated with experts who are like, I know best, let me tell you. And you're like,
yeah, do it my way. I'm like,
yeah. And
no,
you're like, I'm
mess.
figuring it out. I love it. because that's actually true. Even those of us who are experts, we're still figuring it out. It's always evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm no expert. But before we start, I wanted to start on a fun little chatty thing. We have a little something in common. Fun fact, my middle name is Astra, which means star.
I do not know that. I know almost every other star in every language, like Stern and Stella. And but
Greek.
I've never heard of
it's
Greek. Okay, that's
Greek.
Beautiful. Astra is beautiful.
So my parents were hippies, and I was born while the men were on the way to the moon. And so they decided they wanted to do something to honor that whole thing. And so Astra. Yeah, isn't that cool?
I love it. That's beautiful. Everyone always says, "Oh, are your parents?" There's like 5 questions that I am generally asked about my name. Is it real? Did I name myself? Was I a dancer? I was an actor in LA for a while. There were some racy questions at that time. But it's funny. And I don't know, when I meet someone, if I don't think I'm going to know you long, I specifically mean a man who might be coming on to me. I always say my name's Sarah because I don't.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
No, I don't want to explain that my name is real and bring you back from your fantasy that may be happening in your mind.
Yeah. That's so funny. Well, anyway, I just was excited when I
I
learned
love
about you, and
it.
I was like, hey, another star, very cool.
Yes.
Um, so one of the things I know about you is that you are a professional organizer, and you call yourself a clutter whisperer, um, and that you're a little different than other professional organizers. So tell us how.
I consider myself a clutter whisperer because I am looking at how you're using your clutter to benefit you in some way. And that is not a common clutter conversation. In our society, people talk about, oh, clutter is so bad and
Mhm.
it's adding cortisol to your body and stress and costs you money. And all of that is true. Like, yes, clutter is stressful. Yes, it makes our lives harder. But in my experience, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, when you have a pattern of recurring clutter, meaning that you have clutter that just keeps showing up over and over again, no matter
Mhm.
how many times you try to get a handle on it, that clutter is generally being useful in some way. It's doing something to help you. And there's several ways that we use our clutter. So we use it most commonly as a communication. Think about the weights that are sitting on your living room floor as a reminder to work out, or the bill on your counter reminding you to pay it.
Mhm.
We use it as a sense of protection, right? So we build like a wall. I love this concept around, setting boundaries. Around a lot of times we use clutter as a source of protection, either to keep people away or to keep ourselves insulated. We might also use it for security. People who've survived really horrific situations or traumatic experiences of not having their needs met need a certain amount of objects around them to feel safe and like
Mhm.
their needs are met. Like people who survived the Great Depression
Mhm.
needed to have a full pantry because it was
Mhm.
too scary to think about what if I don't have food in the future again.
Yeah. I was co-raised by my mother and my grandmother. And so then my grandmother's sisters, were a big part of my life. And so they were all of the Depression era. And we used to make fun of my Aunt Betty for washing straws. Now that's what you're supposed to do. But back in the 70s, we were like, what are you doing washing straws? And she never threw anything away. Every twist tie that came in from a bread bag, every possible thing you could save, she saved. And it was because they all grew up in extreme poverty and went through the Depression.
Yeah, and that's something that we have never known. I mean, people
Mm-hmm.
in poverty in America now still have an abundance of stuff that people 100 years ago never had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tricky. It's beautiful. Like if you look at the pandemic, we were there locked in, and yes, maybe we didn't have toilet paper, but most of us could order groceries online and have it delivered, or could still make it to a store. Like I don't know many people who are experience like there are definitely a lot of people who don't have the financial means to provide for themselves, especially with groceries and inflation. So that is a real challenge, and it causes us to not want to
Mm-hmm.
waste and pull things in.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like, it is a struggle to have the abundance that we do now, because there is just so much stuff to have to
Mm-hmm.
manage. And it really is, it's such a fine line, because we are living at a time where things are so expensive that people are going without, and almost everybody's homes, even if you're going without, are overflowing with stuff. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's this very tricky conundrum that we find ourselves in the middle of right now.
So, wow, I have so many questions rolling in my head, and I kind of want to circle back to one of the things you talked about, which I haven't heard someone say, but makes total sense to me. And that you said it, people often use the stuff to set up boundaries
Yeah.
and to protect themselves from others, or to isolate themselves. And I've seen that in my own family with certain members, older members of my family who, um, like, it's an excuse to not invite people over.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things happening there. So I would love to explore that more. And, like, I guess, also, before we get into that, sorry, I should backtrack. One of the things we talk um, about feelings and about thoughts that pop in our heads is we try to say, there are no good feelings or bad feelings. There's just feelings. And that when you pay attention to those feelings, that's data. It's telling
Yes.
you something so that you can then make decisions and take action. So I don't want to look at this as like good or bad, like
No.
clutter's good, bad, these boundaries are good or bad. I'm kind of want to think about this in terms of, this is data,
Yeah, I
right?
don't, I
So
never I never put a negative spin on clutter. If anything, I take clutter and say, imagine it's good. Imagine it's doing something positive for you, because the natural societal take is that it's bad and you should be ashamed if you have it and hide it. But the truth is that sometimes it does for us what we don't feel comfortable doing for ourselves. I had a client who had clutter in his car, and he told me, he's like, honestly, I realized through our work together that I have it and I like it, because if my car is cluttered, I can't give anyone a ride home. And my home life is so busy and full with my kids and my family, and my work life is so busy. My drive home is the only quiet time I have. I don't want to share that with someone, and I feel like I need a good excuse. And the minute we can use the clutter as, just like what you're saying, is data, because it's not good or bad. It's just, it's actually both, right? It's all the things. It depends on what you want, what it is for you, but it's doing something for you. And the minute that he tracked that, because here's the fascinating thing, he's driving this car full of clutter, feeling miserable because he's in clutter, not realizing that the clutter is doing something positive. And the minute that he realizes it's doing something positive, he can turn that into a boundary. He can turn that into a, hey, I don't do carpooling. This is my only alone time. And he now has words for the feeling that he'd been stuffing. The clutter goes away. He doesn't need it anymore. And that's that. It's just, we don't have to torture ourselves in order to set our boundaries. Like, what if it's okay? And it's totally okay if you are not comfortable or safe, because some people are not in safe situations where their boundaries will be listened to or where they are safe to be heard. And so if clutter needs to act on your behalf, great. You're still getting your needs met. What if that's okay? What if instead of beating yourself up, you say, wow, I have found a way to get my needs met. And one day I hope to meet those needs in a different way. But for today, they're being met. How great is that?
Yeah. So while you were talking about this example of this client of yours, I was thinking, well, the clutter is the clue that you need to set a boundary. And it's okay to say, I don't want to carpool. I don't like carpooling. Sorry. I need my downtime. I need my decompression time.
Yeah.
We've given people all these different ways of tools of how to set a boundary. I have a policy of not carpooling because I need that mental downtime or whatever. Yeah. But he just he didn't feel he had the right, or just to say, I don't want to,
I don't think it ever dawned on him.
Yeah.
I think for
that
a lot
it was
of
an
people,
option.
Yeah, this is a subconscious thing that happens.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen people use it for protection, like physical protection, if they've had an assault or several assaults happen, and having a cluttered home makes them feel like they almost have an alarm set, because if someone came into their house, they would trip on the clutter and the person would hear them. And, and they don't, it's not like someone steps out and says, I'm going to set up clutter to serve my purposes. But our subconscious is so smart and finds a way of making this happen. And so sometimes, and this is why I'm on such a mission to have this conversation, it's because when I share this with people, they don't say, oh, wow, how fascinating. Let me think about it. They're like, this is so simple. That's exactly what it is. And they start to show me all the 20 ways in their home their clutter is doing this one pattern. And so once we have the mirror held up and we can say, wow, that's what's really going on, it helps a lot. Like, I had one client whose parents this was someone in their early 20s, and their parents kept kind of violating their privacy. And so they kept their room cluttered so that people couldn't find their stuff. And so I said, hey, you're living in clutter to protect someone else. What if you only cluttered the first 3 feet of the room and everything else stayed clutter free? And the minute that she did that, she didn't need the clutter anymore, because it was like, oh, I can do this instead. And I can find a way to protect the stuff that I need to feel, like my safety is preserved instead. And it just gives us an option to think about things in a new light instead of doing it unconsciously.
Yeah. So I am a chronic YouTube viewer. And I'm always and it's always serving up stuff related to boundaries and mental health, because it's the stuff I'm thinking about, talking about, watching, right? And I see all these video thumbnails come up that say clutter is a sign of trauma, and I just kind of go past them. I don't watch them. And so I feel like what you're saying is, yes, clutter can be a sign of trauma. Yeah. But it's not necessarily, that doesn't mean you need to immediately go to a therapist and it's not a bad thing. It's not a negative sign, but let's really look at it and figure out, how is this serving you? And are there other tools or strategies you can use to meet those needs rather than clutter? Or do you say, okay, we're going to leave this clutter, but we're going to organize it in a certain way or something, or we're going to corral it, or we're going to put limits or boundaries on the clutter?
It depends. I mean, so yes, clutter can absolutely be a symptom of trauma, because when we've experienced trauma, if you have PTSD or complex trauma, your brain, they're finding a lot of, science evidence that says that like ADHD, for example, can be a trauma response, like a version of a trauma response. And so the way that your brain copes with the trauma can make your day-to-day executive functioning strained. So we'll just name that that's part of it. So in that case, then you need to solve how your brain works, not try to fit yourself to the solutions that are, the latest and greatest on Pinterest or Marie Kondo. You need to do what works for your brain, and specifically what works for you. Out of sight, out of mind may not work. Whatever it is, you find the solutions that work for you. For some people who've experienced trauma, like the ones that I was describing, those people, it's really imperative to realize that clutter is not a defect. It can sometimes be a defense mechanism. And so looking at that of like, okay, am I trying to use this to protect myself? And my question for people is always, are there other ways you can do that without the clutter? Do you need a doorstop alarm on your front door? Do you need, I don't know, like some sort of weapon next to your bed? Like, what do you need to truly get that need met without the clutter needing to do it for you? Or is the clutter the best version? And the third thing that you mentioned was just, do you just organize it? The beautiful thing about organizing is it is so therapeutic. The process of organizing is so therapeutic. It lets us kind of feel a sense of control in a very out of control world. So sometimes organizing feels amazing. Sometimes it just is super helpful. And reorganizing your socks or doing your junk drawer can actually make you feel empowered in other areas of your life. So the process can actually be very healing for us to see a sense of control in an out of control situation. And for some people, that's just not accessible. Like if you look at your clutter and you feel paralyzed or overwhelmed or stuck or panic, you might have what I call activated clutter, which is more emotional clutter that's doing something for you. And the thought of removing that or reorganizing it can feel threatening because it's meeting a deeper need. And in that case, you want to jump in and find out what's the deeper need. And what's interesting to me too, Heather, is a lot of people suffer with clutter and never tell their therapist. Their therapist has no idea that they have this anxiety or pain around their clutter. They keep it separate. And I'll have clients that I'll say, please take this pile of mail into your therapist. Like take this in, and we need both people involved because it's an emotional, psychological issue more than just where do I put these papers? The greatest question you can ask yourself is not what system is going to work to organize my clutter, but it's how am I using my clutter to help me? Because normally when we have recurring clutter, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. There's some heavy things here. So let's say you've done some work as far as recognizing what clutter is doing and how it's serving you. And let's say you make a decision. Okay, yes, I'm going to somehow. I don't like the way I'm living. I don't feel good about this. Right. Where do you start if you feel overwhelmed? Like I would think for someone when I'll just share one quick example. So I am a neat freak, but I also have ADHD. And so sometimes things kind of get stashed in piles. Like I start, right? And then I attack things in bites. Like I'll do a cupboard or a drawer or whatever. And I love that. I get that feeling of accomplishment you're talking about. It makes me feel very empowered. And then there have been times, my husband and I, who've been together for over 30 years, we have very different styles. And so I'll go about organizing like the pantry or the spice drawer or where we keep the pots and pans and stuff. And I'm happy, and everyone else is like, it was fine. Where is everything? Right. Or I'll go to reorganize his office because I walk in there and it's like a bomb went off. and I have to turn around and walk out because it's just overwhelming how much stuff is in there. So I've tried several times to clean it up for him and organize it for him, but then he doesn't know where anything is and it drives him crazy. So I guess what I'm saying is, A, where do you start if you feel overwhelmed, like someone like my husband, who's like, I don't want to, I hate this, but I don't want anything moved. And also, how do you work within a household when different people have different feelings and priorities around stuff?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
that was a whole lot all at once.
That's okay. I got you. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, there's a couple of things. So the first thing is start with something so easy that it feels like it's not worth doing. Most people who have clutter are actually perfectionists, or they're very detail oriented, and they get a lot of flack for being, oh, you're lazy, you're not putting stuff away, or we talk to ourselves. And a lot of times it's because the system in their head is so detailed that they're having a hard time matching their life up to that system of what should be there. So sometimes it's as simple as just do something that's so simple, because we're trying to break you out of that freeze. And it can be putting on your favorite song and organizing for 3 minutes a day, because that's at least breaking you out of the freeze and moving you into action. Now, if that even feels too big, because again, a lot of times we perceive that those of us with clutter feel like we're late. We need to make, progress as of yesterday. And we're racing, and that working from an anxious place does not help us make grounded, focused actions that really make a difference. So, focusing on I'm going to do this small little project, this drawer, this one cabinet, this spot, and just making it consistent more than just this giant thing that we burn ourselves out. So starting small is big, but if that even feels too much, you can instead start by asking yourself a couple of questions. So think of one space that you want to organize. So in this case, it would be the office, and ask 3 questions. Ask, what do I want to do in this space? And there should really only be 3 to 5 answers to that. We don't want more than that, or you're going to feel totally overwhelmed, in a space. So what 3 to 5 things am I going to do in this space? How do I want the space to look? And how do I want the space to feel? And if you're not a feelings person, you can ask yourself instead, what do I want to experience when I'm in here? And that becomes your roadmap for this room. That becomes something that you post up on the wall, because then you can actually get into a creative space, because some people need to start by decorating, not by organizing. For some people, they need to see a little bit of payoff along the way, because organizing for 40 hours is just not energetically exciting or worth it to them. So they might need to say, okay, I'm going to paint. And then that awakens them. Because again, what we're looking for is something that wakes them up and makes them feel excited and gets them into a state of flow. So that's kind of how we can work if you're feeling overwhelmed and it's hard to start. Now, when it comes to organizing a family, it's so tricky, right? Because, as the mother, I would imagine, society puts a lot of pressure on us moms of like, it's your job, whether they say it or not. It's like the house is the woman's job. And that's how a lot of people have been conditioned, right? So you're jumping in and doing this one by yourself, which I cannot imagine doesn't lead to some level of resentment within you to be like, oh, great, I have to do it again. Great. And then they're going to complain about it. Thanks. It's like, but really what we're thinking about, especially when we have a family, is everyone's needs taken into account. And so what's annoying is that you want to do it now, and you have time now, and you have energy now, and focus and drive now. So I just want to do it. And everybody else may not be in that same place. So you don't have their presence or buy-in to make progress. So you just do it on your own. But what that does is it leaves their perspective and their needs left out of the mix, which is why they're then complaining that they can't find things, because they haven't been considered. And so they need to be considered, right? So for the lack of complaining, I mean, look, and a lot of people are the home runners, right? They're the home managers, and they organize everything and they maintain it. And then you need a good therapist to manage the resentment, because it's, I don't know many people who are very happy doing that all the time. But the beauty is when you're thinking, especially about a family, you're not just organizing the kitchen spices, you are teaching your children how to make a home for themselves. Right. You're teaching them how to create systems and evolve systems, and how do you fit that into your life, and what are the ways that you process objects, and you're teaching them life skills. And so we often in our society think about organizing as a task to complete, when it's really, partly a healing journey, but also partly an education in how to do time management, how to manage your home, how to manage your possessions. And it's something that's worth taking a little bit longer to include the family members so that everyone feels seen and that they start to learn how their brain works and what they require from systems. And it's also so healing for them to feel considered, to be like, oh, my opinion, because especially kids, if you look at kids, they just want to matter and they want to feel like
they like to be involved. Yeah.
Yes. And they want to feel like what they do makes an impact. There's, I live in Santa Fe and we have this interactive art installation here called Meow Wolf. And it is so fun to be there and to watch kids interact because they can touch a button and they see an action that comes from the touching of this button. They have an impact, and the excitement and the joy that they feel. It's so different than even just a standard sense of play, because kids often feel like they are just living in this giant world, and it lets them feel like I matter, I have an impact, I can do things that that I'm seen. It's so powerful to include our children and our families in this very healing, sacred journey.
Individuals' brains are very different, like different thinking styles, different, I know there's this organizer, I forget her name, but she has this like clutter bug system where she says some people like to see things, some people like to have things put away. And I definitely can see that in my family, that there are different types of thinking about how systems should operate, right? And I think having that conversation is very good advice. I've done something. We have this very like old 1940s kitchen. It's like knotty pine and woodsy and stuff. And so we're constantly quiet. We're cooks. We love to cook at home. And so we have all this stuff, right? And so I was looking around. I'm like, I'm going to get hooks. I'm going to hang up all the cast iron pans. I'm going to hook the utensils up. I'm going to use vertical space. And it's literally at eye level, right? And then people are in my house going, where are the spatulas? And I'm like, turn around. They're right there. But like their brains just work differently, So to me, it seems obvious, but I really should have said, hey, I'm thinking about doing it this way. What do you think?
Well, and I want to really validate and celebrate you as a woman and as a mom, because there are so many years where that's not an option. And it's really hard to know when you unhitch yourself from being the captain of that crew. Because, for a long time, you're not going to ask a toddler or an infant to feed themselves, right? Like, help yourself to the breast whenever you have time. It's like, no, it's like children require everything of you. And so it's really hard to know when that shifts off, because every single phase of motherhood, you're just trying to stay afloat, because every kid is different. Every phase is different. I just want to, I don't know that there's any should, but what a beautiful chapter for them to step into. And for you too, to say, I'm going to release some of the control and welcome in my beautiful family. And in this, help them learn who they are more. And to celebrate that, because as you mentioned, having ADHD, and a lot of people are diagnosed later in life, especially, in our generations. Yep. And so how many decades did people walk around thinking that there was something wrong with them, that they weren't performing the way everyone else was? Versus imagine if someone had taken a very genuine interest in how your brain worked at a young age and said, wow, well, other people do it this way, but you do it that way. And how beautiful. And let's get you a system. Like you're smiling right now. Like the thought of having someone really care about what you need is just, beautiful. So healing.
Yeah. And on that very positive note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. That's a Hard No is brought to you by Clever Girl Marketing, my full-service agency specializing in smart, strategic marketing solutions for businesses and nonprofits. Okay, so you're probably wondering, Heather, what's with the podcast about boundaries? Why not marketing? Well, maybe in the future, but for now, it actually does relate, so bear with me here. Smart marketing, strategic marketing, requires knowing what to say no to and why. Businesses and nonprofits get inundated with marketing options and offers every day. We help you cut through all that noise, focus on your specific needs, and develop actionable strategies that are doable and actually make sense. Whether it's websites, SEO, email, social, or traditional channels, we're experienced in all of it. So if you need help figuring out your marketing, visit our website, clevergrowmarketing.com, and get in touch. Welcome back to the show. I hope you guys are finding as much value in my conversation with Star as I did. She helped me flip the script about the way I think about my home and tidiness, let me tell you. That being said, the way I feel about my home now is also different. Star is full of profound, mind-blowing statements that are really insightful. I hope they help you the way they've helped me get a hold of my thinking around cleaning and organizing and unpacking the conversation about clutter as deliberately as the clutter itself. Okay, we're back with Star Hansen. I kind of want to touch back again about feelings and stuff, and you talked about people feeling guilty or feeling like they're bad or disorganized or they feel shame or whatever. And I think a lot of that comes from, for lack of a better phrase, FOMO, because we see all these beautiful homes on social media and on HGTV and all these things, and we're comparing ourselves to others, or we're comparing ourselves to sort of a idealized version of our childhoods or something like that. I know that when I was first married, I would always kind of freak out whenever my in-laws would come over, who, by the way, are the nicest people in the world. My father-in-law is like very liberated man, but for some dumb reason, even to this day, I'm like, he's going to judge the household if the toilet's not clean, like, so I guess I want to talk about that and how we get over that comparison and the feelings of not being good enough.
Yeah. Well, a few different things. So, one, when we compare ourselves and our lives today to our childhood, most of us are not 21, right? So, if we're listening to this, we're probably not 21. So, our childhood wasn't 5 to 10 years ago, it was decades ago. And there was just so much less stuff then. Like, buy a house from the 1920s and see the teeny tiny baby closets they had because they had like 5 outfits. So, they had so much less stuff. So acknowledging, one, that even if someone in your life or you have a memory of things being so much easier, it's just because stuff was not as present as it is today. So that's the first thing, is just, to kind of knock that out, that yes, absolutely, we can respect and admire how people took care of things. But if you took our ancestors and rolled them into this time and space, they're still going to have to manage all the stuff we have now. I mean, I've been a minimalist a few times in my life. It's not where I like to necessarily live. But when I have, it takes a superhuman effort to say no and reject things from coming into your life. Gifts, things that people hand you when you go to parties, like things that come in your mail. It is just, we have a lot of stuff. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when it comes to social media, please remember, no one is on there being like, look at my normal life. Look at my, my
Pile
tragic day. Yeah. There was there was some sort of like big issue made about, I think it was Kate Hudson, like 10 years ago. And they were like, Kate Hudson shares a picture on social media with clutter in it. And it was like the babyest clutter. It was like a clutter made a baby, and it was still an infant, adorable. I was like, yeah, okay, Kate Hudson. And why don't we normalize what's normal? What is normalized is the Kardashians. And let me just tell you, they are not maintaining that themselves. They might hire someone to come in and do it, and then they have housekeepers and assistants who are keeping it up and making sure that those decanted pantries are full and ready, and managing the extra basket of crap that doesn't fit, right? So it's just, know that social media and television is not real. I've done over 30 TV shows. Let me give you the formula for what happens on those shows. We go in, we're like, I've known for weeks what that space looked like, and I know what we're working on. I show up to the house. Oh no, it's so bad. It's so horrible. Big reaction. We remove 100% of the stuff. We put 30% back in a pretty way. And we say, ta-da, there you go. They're not handling everything. There's 70% sitting in your backyard, in your guest room, somewhere else. That because their job is not to actually get you organized. Their job is to get a good TV segment. And as an organizer with integrity, it took like an insane amount of work for me to like push and be like, okay, here's how we get the real reveal. You're not going to sleep this week. Like, I had people who I did TV shows with who did not sleep because they chose to get a true transformation. And that was insane. And then my producers were not happy with me. They're like, we need them to sleep. And I'm like, I need them to not feel abandoned in a week, you know?
Yeah. Because how do you maintain it? Like if there's no real system in place or you haven't really gotten rid of stuff.
That's not the show's
Yeah,
not the
that's not
show's
their
problem.
goal.
You know,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
not
the
their
thing.
goal.
Like when I had brought it up to them and I said, hey, I'm really not okay with this. They're like, but we painted their walls. And I'm like, well, that's nice, but this is an organizing show and they didn't need their walls painted. Like it really, you have to kind of remember that anything on TV and social media is entertainment. That means it's not 100% real.
Mhm.
And when we are holding ourselves accountable to those external measures, of course we feel shame. Of course we feel like we're not measuring up.
Right.
I'm not alone on those shows. I'm there with a crew of 50. We are showing up. We are taking
Yeah.
over your home. There are people moving your stuff.
Yeah.
I barely have time to organize when I'm doing those shows. Like literally, I've had to hire my own assistants to come in and work for me because I can't do it. And so it's just, please remember that those are not real. Nothing, sorry, everyone, nothing on TV is real. It's pretend.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, when we
entertainment.
stop holding ourselves accountable to fake reality, that's when we can really let ourselves off the hook. And what would it be like to normalize having a normal, healthy, active life? If you are a baker, Heather, to me, if I come over and your kitchen looks perfect, that's fine. But I feel like you judged for me, you know, like you prepped for me. If you welcome me into your home in the middle of baking a pie and there's flour everywhere and ingredients out, I feel like part of your family. I feel special. I feel embraced. I feel like, wow, like she's having her life in front of me. Like how, like if you are like lucky enough to enter into my sacred sanctuary of my home, I want to live my life with you. I don't, you know, it's like, I don't invite people here who are unsafe. Like my home is for me. And so if you are welcome into my home, that means that I feel like you're safe enough to enjoy and embrace my life with me. And there is no kinder, more loving expression of how you feel about me than if you really live your life genuinely in front of me and with me.
I love that. I love that. That's a really good way to think about it.
Thank you.
All right. So we've talked a lot about the thinking and the feelings and the identifying. Let's talk about the doing.
Yes.
So I would just, I got a lot of stuff. So give us some practical tips of like where to begin and maybe how to start or like grouping things, filtering things. I don't know. You tell me. What are some basic things people can do to start?
So let's just name that most people were never taught how to get organized. So the reason why organizing is such an enigma is because, again, most parents were just trying to keep their heads above water, right? They're like 24 years old. We think of them as big adults, but they're like, I'm barely keeping it together. You know? So we weren't taught how to organize, and we certainly weren't taught how to organize for the volume of stuff we have now. So first and foremost, we need to learn how to organize. We need to learn and truly organizing is simple. In my experience, there are 10 steps for how you organize. And I've used these 10 steps in my private classes to teach thousands of people how to organize. Because if you don't know these steps, you're literally flailing around. You kind of go into a room and you start to look at something, you find something that's interesting, you begin reading it. And then you're like, what was I doing? Oh no. So it's like,
or you
so
do the thing I do where you go and you put it somewhere and then you get involved in that area.
Yeah,
and totally
squirrel.
get sidetracked and then
Totally. Totally. So what I tell people is if you can learn these 10 steps, it's one of the best things that you can experience and what you can do for yourself. And if your listeners want, they can download the list of 10 steps at organizingiseasy.com. And so starting there, just starting with, okay, great. How do I do this? And what that starts like, I won't bore you with all of the steps right now, but what I will say is the 3 questions that I mentioned earlier about your husband's office, that's the best place to start. Work room by room. Pick one room, set your intentions for that room, and get to work in there. And so what we really want to do is a lot of times what happens is we look at a cluttered space and we just want to dive in. And by dive in, I mean, we take one item and we look at it and we're like, I don't know what to do with this. So I set it down. I'll grab something else. Oh, this is easy. I can do that. I don't like this. I'll just hold on to this for a second. It's like it becomes this chaos in our like physical hands. So what I tell people is when you start off creating categories, which is always the beginning step, what you want to do is you want to look at it like it's someone else's stuff. Pretend like you're at my house and you're helping me out. All you're looking for is broad categories. You are taking no action the first round of organizing. So you're basically just taking the items from that room and you are creating broad categories: office supplies, paperwork, tennis shoes, laundry, not clean laundry, dirty laundry, just clothing items. And then you're going to go back through each of those categories. Once you're done, create any subcategories that you need. And then you can start to make decisions like, ooh, I love this t-shirt. This is memorabilia. I'm going to put it in the attic with my memory box for my grandma. Ooh, this is stuff that's too small. I'm going to donate it. This is stuff that I love. And so you want to work in categories, because when I'm going through a giant room of stuff and I come across a lamp, I might be so into this lamp. I love this lamp. It's so beautiful. Not realizing that I have 7 other lamps and the one that I'm looking at is broken. So you need the context of all the similar items together if you're really going to make your decisions be meaningful. This saves time. Most people fight against this because they're like, what a waste of time. I'm just going to work slowly, one tiny object at a time. And it's like, please don't. Categorize everything first, then make your decisions. And then when it comes to setting up your systems, again, take time with this. It's not about like shoving stuff back in. What the goal of organizing is how am I going to use this in the future? Not how do I get this shoved away right now so I don't have to deal with it anymore, but how do I put this away in a way that it helps my future self to use it, so that I feel supported, so that I have what I need where I need it. A common organizing, falsity is only have one home for everything. Sure. Most of the time that's probably true, but I have 3 pairs of scissors in different locations in my home because there are 3 different locations where I use scissors from time to time. So there's nothing wrong with splitting it up, because the point is not to adhere to some strict organizing code of what you're supposed to do. It's to support you and your family in living your best life with as little barrier to entry to accessing the things that you need, where you need them, how you need them.
Wow. Okay. I'm already imagining what rooms I'm going to start using this organizing with.
Yay!
I would think that when you get to the point where you're making decisions, I think this is where people really get stuck, is like what to let go of. And that's where that spark joy thing comes from, right? Like if you don't absolutely love it, then you get rid of it. And I know that's not the style of organizing you do, but I kind of, when I heard that first phrase, it was the first time I understood I was holding on to things out of guilt, or because a certain person gave it to me and I felt like I just wasn't allowed to get rid of it. But I also think, and especially like in the case of my Aunt Betty, going back to the conversation about the Depression era people, there's the scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset. And that with the scarcity mindset, it's like, what if I need this and I can't afford to replace it or something, right? And so I'm wondering like how you help people make those decisions and get past the emotional part of that. Are there any tips for making decisions? There's the whole thing like, if you haven't worn it in a year, put it in the we'll see box, or you hear, if you haven't worn it in a year, just get rid of it. I have bins, I will admit, of the skinny clothes from when I was a little less heavy, and my dream is someday I'll wear them again. We'll see. And so I have bins of clothing that I'm not wearing because I can't fit into them. So like, how do you get people to let go of things and be okay with it?
What I love about when Marie Kondo said, does it spark joy, is that it was probably the first time in the clutter conversation that you mattered, that your opinion, feelings, and needs mattered. Asking yourself, does this spark joy, says, does this feel good to you? Does it? And most of us, we're not thinking about how we're told to clean our room. Clean your room. That's not good enough. What'd you get rid of? Like organizing is all about purging and paring down and boxing. And until Marie Kondo started this beautiful conversation of, hey, does this feel good to you?
Does this make you happy? Yeah.
Does this work for you? Is this, because look, I don't like my bras, but they're not going anywhere. Taxes aren't really on my top list of joyful things. They're not going anywhere either. So it's not like a hard, fast rule, but what it does is it says, who you are matters. And I do love that. And I think that that's a big part of, like, when I talk to people about the 5 ways that they're using clutter to get their needs met, what I'm really saying is your needs matter. And right now you're using clutter to get that need met. Are there other ways that get that need met in a more direct way? You know, I have clients who actually do not feel comfortable paring down certain items, even though they know it would give them the home that they're looking for, because they have either experienced several bouts of insecurity when it comes to food or housing or financial aspects in the past, and they don't necessarily feel like that's behind them. It can feel terrifying. So I think beyond the organizing questions of like, how do you get rid of stuff? It's more about saying, like, what do you really need? Like, do you need more income coming in? Do you need a roommate? Do you, like, what is it that you need to feel like your needs are met? Because clutter is really secondary. And if your needs are not met, clutter is going to be right there acting on your behalf, trying to help you. And so for me, it's really about doing the deeper look and saying, okay, what is the clutter that continues to pile up? And where is it piling up? Because those 2 bits of information tell us a lot, because every area of your home represents an area of your life. So if you have clutter in the kitchen or clutter in the office, those mean very different things. And so really starting to get curious, I would say the biggest thing that I could offer people is look at your clutter with curiosity and not judgment. That shame, that feeling like there's something wrong with us, that makes us be like, oh, I should have cleaned up for you. I should have gotten rid of that. Or why do I have so many? Pause. Why do you have so many? Like, not from a place of you're doing it wrong and you shouldn't, but genuinely, what if it was okay? Like, oh, I have so many because this is the exact right tennis shoe that I love, and I know they're going to discontinue them, so I bought 5 of them. I would actually say, yay, freaking hooray. You found a tennis shoe that you love. Great. That's going to last you how many, like 5 years?
Get one in every color. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I am like the anti-organizer in the way that I'm like, if you find the thing that works for you, really stick with it. But that's not a lot of times the clutter that we're dealing with. A lot of times it's the stuff that isn't really serving us that we think we should hold on to. That leopard print candle from your aunt, your, like the old china set that you never use anymore. Like, giving ourselves the freedom to say yes. And like, I was an actor back in the day, and a big part of improvisation is yes, yes, and.
Yes.
And most of us start our conversation with ourselves about clutter with no, no, no. And the no's lead us to the yes. So if you think of it as like, we have a 360-degree, circle around us that we can make any of these choices, and every single no moves us closer to our yes. So use your no's to guide you to your yes. And when you find a yes, say yes, and like double down on that and say, yes, that works for me. And I'm going to like really lean into it, because most people that I work with, they already have the foundation of the systems that will work for them. They have just abandoned it too soon. They didn't finish it. And so you already have buried in your clutter the makings of the systems that are going to work for you. So trust yourself. Use organizing as a healing journey to learn to trust yourself and really give yourself to what you know works for you and build on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I know. I think we all do that, right? We all buy containers. We all find the drawer organizers, but then, we don't follow through on the system. So I think that's very good advice. I think the other thing to think about too is acquiring stuff, right? So I've gotten into a thing the past several years. Like, if I don't absolutely love something, especially when it comes to clothing or shoes or something, if I'm not going to wear it immediately and I don't absolutely love it, I don't get it. Because
same. If I buy something and I bring it home and I don't wear it before the return policy, I have to return it.
Oh, that's a good policy. I like that.
Yeah. Yes. And I swear I'm stuck with, there's 3 shirts in my closet right now that I didn't do that with. And I think about them all the time, because I'm like, oh, because it like, I don't know why I didn't do it, but they're there. But it really does help. It lets us go home and be like, if I'm not so excited, I need it today. I don't need it. And there will always be a time for something new, because we live in a consumer driven society. So they're never going to not be stuff for us. Right, I mean, even in zombie apocalypse movies, they go to the mall. So
this is true.
We're never going to have a shortage of stuff in America. That's just not a thing for us. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. So say no to the stuff that you don't need to make room for the yeses you already have and need to organize. So
absolutely.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm going to go with it.
Yes.
Well, Star, this has been fantastic. Any other last bits of advice you'd like to share, or anything you want to promote, or how people can get a hold of you and engage with you?
Absolutely. I would love to gift your readers with a copy of my book, Why the F Am I Still Not Organized?
Wow.
So, yeah, if they want to go to Star Hansen, and that's StarHansen.com/podcast, they can download a free copy of my book and discover why in the F their clutter won't go away.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Yeah,
Star.
and of course. And that goes deep into the deeper levels of what your spaces mean and the way that we use our clutter, so you can take what we've talked about today and move it to the next level. And if I was going to leave your listeners with any parting words, it would just to be that there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're doing all the right things. And please don't buy into society saying that you need to be a size 2 or in a perfectly curated, organized house. Like, I think that living a full and thriving life is sometimes messy, and it's preferable to living in a perfect Pinterest-worthy house. And so really try to see your clutter as proof of abundance instead of a defect, because it really is proof of your abundant life.
Wow. That was really profound. Thank you. That was wonderful. And I really appreciate everything we've talked about in this conversation. I'm going to go home and look at my house in a whole new light.
I'm so glad to be here with you. It was really wonderful to chat with you today. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. That's a Hard No is a production of Clever Girl Marketing, my little agency in Cleveland, in partnership with our friends at Evergreen Podcasts. Many thanks to our amazing team, including Maura de Rosario, our production and marketing coordinator, Noah Foutz, our amazing producer, editor, and composer who wrote our theme music and performed it with his band, The Big Leagues, and our new video producer and editor, Kae Holmberg. You can find show notes and resources on our website, and you can find other fun stuff on our socials. We're Hard No Podcast. Find your no, then say it with me.